Hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell, and I'm recording this on July 6th. So please make sure you subscribe to all the channels so you can watch all the different videos that I publish. I have 4 channels on YouTube: Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. I do all these videos for free. If you'd like to help support the work, please go to my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Donate through Stripe, PayPal, or buy me a coffee on the homepage at the very bottom, or you can be a paid member to my Patreon channel. It's a great way to help support the work I do. All the videos I do are for free. I don't put stuff behind a paywall, so please help support the work. I also have ebooks, supplements, and course material on immunology and pulmonology. If you follow the protocol that I do, you'll be able to replicate and slow down the aging process. You're going to be able to replicate what I'm doing and slow down and get the vitality that you need to slow down that aging process and boost up that immune system. Super important. All right. Some of the products that I offer on my store are structural nano silver soaps. I have the charcoal tea tree, lemongrass, lavender soap, and also peppermint. This is made from structural nano silver. Get a few bars for your household. Very high quality soaps to help support the work that I do and to help your health and wellness. If there is an irritation in your throat, no matter what the season is, you need to mitigate that irritation right away. A great way to do that is to take the drops. The drops that I have are 100 per bag. You can get it in honey and lemon, in cherry flavor, and also in blueberry. So go to my store and get the drops. I also have in stock elderberry zinc, 21 in each bag. Get a few bags for your household. And again, if you have that irritation, take the drops or the lozenges right away. Mitigate that issue. If you have something festering, it takes a couple weeks for it to heal the tissue. So it's really important to mitigate it right away. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the drops and the lozenges. A lot of people don't realize that even if you have a benign issue with throat irritation, maybe even a mild cold that lasts for 5 or 7 days, it takes 2 weeks to 3 weeks to heal the damaged tissue. That means that if you get sick 3 times a year, nine weeks out of the year, you're either not feeling well or you are remodeling the damaged tissue. So if this is chronic, your body is aging quicker. So it's important to mitigate these issues right away so it's not aging you as fast. So it's important to mitigate. That's the reason why you want to take these drops and lozenges. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the lozenges and the drops. All right, we're going to play Times Radio about the economy based on this passage of the bill that took place on July 4th. Now, what's important to realize here is that part of the bill is to reduce the fraud and abuse of food stamps and of Medicare and Medicaid and the welfare state. And a lot of people don't realize that there are ones that really do need the welfare, that are in need and are disabled, and they need that care and that welfare. There are others that are just abusing the system that are citizens that could work, they just don't want to. And there are others that are not citizens, that are illegal aliens, that are taking the welfare, using that welfare because their sanctuary city is willing to give it out. So they're going to be debating on this video, that the states are going to have to fill the gap for the food stamp. Well, if you have a sanctuary city and you have a lot of illegal immigrants coming to the city, using social programs, burdening the tax base, and if the city starts running out of money or the state starts running out of money because they brought in too many illegal aliens, why should the federal government come in and bail them out? So you need that feedback loop within the state or the city that says that if you spend too much, you need to cut somewhere. So getting rid of the fraud and abuse, including the sanctuary cities, using the taxpayer money to fund illegal aliens to be in these cities, getting rid of that, I think is a good idea. Getting rid of this pigs at the trough. There are a lot of people that are abusing the system, and the taxpayers can't afford it anymore. That's the point. So you need to have mechanisms in place that forces the states and the cities to pull back and reduce their allowance to illegal aliens. All right, let's play the video.
It's a very bad thing to add 3.3 trillion to the debt over 10 years. And the response to that is that the growth will generate enough income and that the tariffs will generate enough income to offset the revenue loss from the tax cuts. I'm doubtful about that.
Speaking at a rally in Iowa yesterday, the US president was enjoying his win.
There could be no better birthday present for America than the phenomenal victory we achieved just hours ago when Congress passed the one big beautiful bill to make America great again. Right? Deport the illegals and slash hundreds of billions of dollars of waste and fraud, and that's what we're doing. With this bill, every major promise I made to the people of Iowa in 2024 became a promise kept.
But is it really a win for the American people? Let's hear from Owen Stelzer, who's director of the Hudson Institute's Economic Policy Studies Group and who writes in the Sunday
I mean,
Times.
just think of what she's insinuating. She's saying that getting rid of illegal aliens is not a good idea. That's what she's insinuating. That wasteful spending, getting rid of wasteful spending is not a good idea. That's what she's insinuating with this. We'll find out if this is really beneficial for the economy.
You, Owen.
Good afternoon, John Yeoman.
You need to meet surging content demands without compromising your business or your brand. With Adobe Express, your global teams across marketing, sales, HR, and more can better engage.
Good afternoon, John Yeoman. This is a tough act to follow.
He's very smart, but I'm sure you're up to the job. I feel very confident. It's interesting, isn't it, hearing Trump in his pomp there. He has prevailed. A lot of people thought he wouldn't. He is master of all he surveys, isn't he?
Pretty much. I mean, that was a phenomenal political victory to take both the House and the Senate with almost no room for error, a single bad voter, and get a major policy statement passed is a phenomenal political achievement. Whether it's a phenomenal economic achievement is another matter.
Well, let's come on to the economics of this then, because, low taxes of this sort have been an article of faith for Republicans for so long. Will they work, do you think, in terms of stimulating the economy?
They will work. The question is by how much. There's no question that lower taxes stimulate growth and that the lower taxes contained in this bill will some of the lower taxes contained in this bill will stimulate growth. We don't know by how much, and we don't know if that offsets the tax cuts when it comes to total revenue. But basically, those are a good thing.
Well, I mean,
I think it's really simple. You're going to have less taxes, so you're going to be able to save and consume. So the GDP is going to go up. Why? GDP is based on government expenditures plus investment plus consumption plus the net of exports minus imports. So if you are lowering taxes and your consumption is going up, and you have you have individuals investing, households investing because they have more income to be able to invest, and you have businesses investing in their business, you're going to have more GDP. Now people would say, well, if you have less tax revenue, then the government is not going to be able to spend as much to grow the government. Well, the thing is that usually government spending is not productive. So if it's not productive, it becomes a debt burden, and it actually causes a lower growth rate for the GDP. So this idea of just tax revenue and tax cuts, you know, they don't offset and well, what about the growth, the 10-year growth rate of the economy? If we have a 2 or 3% growth rate with a $23 trillion economy, GDP, then you're talking about $500 to $700 billion per year added to GDP. So you're talking about, you know, without compound interest, without compounding this exponentially, just a simple linear way of looking at this, you're talking about from a 23 trillion to about a 23 to about $29 trillion GDP in 10 years. It's almost $30 trillion. So if they're saying, well, the tax cuts and you know aren't offset by the revenues and blah blah blah, and then it's going to cause a $2 trillion deficit over a 10-year period. Really? Is it really? Is it really going to be a $2 or $3 trillion deficit, or even a $5 trillion deficit over 10 years? If you look at the actual growth rate of the GDP, if my simple math is right, then you're talking about a $3 or $4 trillion increase in GDP, not a reduction.
Cuts. There are obviously these very swinging welfare cuts. I mean, cuts to Medicaid, which, you know, I'm sure listeners are familiar, will deprive millions of low-income and disabled Americans of their health care. Millions of.
If you're truly disabled and can't work, you're covered. That's very clear. The Republicans have said multiple times on multiple news networks that if you really need it, you get it. It's when the ones that can work but are abusing the system. So like I said, there are 3 categories here. You have the ones that really need it and will get it. The ones that are abusing the system, that are citizens, and then the ones that are non-citizens, that are illegal aliens that are abusing the system. Those latter 2 categories are the ones that this bill is going after. They want to reduce the wasteful spending. So this woman is saying, well, the ones that are poor and the ones that are invalids, well, their benefits are going to be taken away. Well, wait a minute. What is the premise here? Fraudulent use of the welfare. Taking advantage of the situation, not filling the full requirements to obtain that welfare. Things should be just for free? Really? We can't afford it anymore.
Low-income recipients of SNAP will be deprived of benefits of help with food costs. Does this bill risk tipping millions into deprivation?
I don't think so.
You have a lot of people taking advantage of the system. Now, to be classified as taking advantage of the system, one, they could work and they're just not working, so they'll be forced to work. Second, the ones that are here illegally need to be kicked out because they should not be burdening the system. Why should taxpayers pay for services that an illegal alien is using when you have citizens that are in need? The ones that are in need should get more benefits, not less, if they meet the criteria. But the ones that are here illegally, are the ones that are abusing the system? No, they should not get their benefits.
One of the problems is that the headlines about taking a lot of people out of Medicaid don't reflect the fact that the bill says that healthy people on Medicaid must be seeking a job in order to get the benefits. That's a pretty good thing. I think you guys are experimenting with something like that, or should be.
Well,
Now,
it's been a bit of a U-turn.
yeah, yes, I follow that too. But so I think that the danger to people receiving Medicaid is overstated. Now, it is true that people who've entered the country illegally will also be deprived of benefits, but I don't know how you do benefits that will benefit anybody who happens to get into the United States. So I think that's been overstated. On the other hand, I think the SNAP program, which essentially bolsters the food budgets of poor people, has been cut. And I think the hope that the states will fill.
How many people are on SNAP that are abusing the system and have an iPhone? You ever thought about that?
Gap is a hope at the moment, and we'll just have to see.
And I suppose one of the other big worries economically is about debt, because it will add $3.3 trillion to the deficit between now and 2034. There are worries that, that will, that the whole thing will sort of stimulate this kind of sugar rush, but then there'll be a crash. Do you think those fears are valid?
Well, first of all, it's a very bad thing to add 3.3 trillion to the debt over 10 years. And the
3.3 trillion over 10 years. But if you have a growth rate of, let's say, 2.5 or 3% for the GDP, you're going to get about 600 to 700 billion dollars a year in added GDP. So you take that out, and you're talking about, if it's a 3% growth, about $7 billion. That's about 30 trillion as a GDP total. So 7 minus 3 is 4. So you have an additional $4 trillion in GDP. Amazing how that works, as long as your policies are productive. It doesn't work when your policies are unproductive. And that's the problem that these fucking liberals don't understand. If you have government spending that's unproductive, it doesn't help. And you're just paying lots of interest on unproductive programs. If you have policies in place, either government programs or tax reductions, and it allows for growth in the economy, then it's a productive policy. Now, I think that this particular law that passed, this bill that passed, now it's law, the big beautiful law, is now going to allow for a major increase in our GDP. Now, that doesn't mean there's not headwinds. AI causing problems in the labor market is going to be one. Maybe even, financial engineering causing some sort of illiquidity in the markets will rear its head. Now, I want to give you a thought here, all right? I think from now to about 2029, we're going to have the roaring 20s, the roaring 2020s, right? It actually started with the mean reversion from the market crash during the crisis of 2020. That's when it started, right? It didn't feel like it was the roaring 20s, but we're in the roaring 20s. Now, what is interesting is in 1907, Knickerbocker Trust failed because of, at that time, their version of financial engineering, issuing debt to purchase shares of different companies, right? They were called trusts. So there was this trust financial engineering that took place. The trusts started to fail. This happened in 1907. All right. 1907. You take 100 years later, 2007, you end up getting Lehman, another financial engineering fiasco. Now, if nature works in a fib sequence and human society works in a fib sequence, there's an emergent property that takes place where history rhymes. And I would not be surprised that we will see, just like we saw in 1929, a major market crash that led to a depression. I would not be surprised that we see something similar in 2020. But there's going to be this roaring 20s. Now, what creates that crash may be because of too much of the labor force being dislocated because of AI, the decoupling of labor and capital. Maybe it's also with financial engineering and people not being able to pay for their debt that was accumulating from the 2020s, and they start to default, and therefore these financial engineering products start to fall, just like what happened with the Lehman crash. There was these derivatives, mortgage-backed securities, people stopped paying their mortgage and everything started collapsing. Something similar might be happening that will be emerging that's tied to AI and not allowing for people to be employed. Maybe that's what happens, but I have a sense, I have a feeling that something similar is going to happen. Another thing that I think is very telling is in 1918 was the Spanish flu. It carried on until 1919. But you go 100 years later, 2019 was the beginning of COVID. So there seems to be some sort of rhythm that's taking place, this 100-year rhythm. So 1907 to 2007, there was 100 years where you had this, you start having the financial crash. And something similar with pathogens. So what does this mean? It means that humans do things that they don't fully understand. And there's an emergent property that takes place. Inoculations in 1918, messing around with stuff in laboratories in 2019, things get released on purpose or on accident, and an emergent property happens. Financial engineering, during certain epochs, 1907 with the trusts, especially with Knickerbocker, and then fast forward 100 years later in the financial engineering with mortgage-backed securities. Something similar is going to be taking place. So the next big hit is something taking place in 2029. If this whole concept makes sense. Now, it's independent of this bill, but in the short run, I think the economy is going to get better. And over a 10-year period, the economy is probably going to be more than $30 trillion. The GDP will be more than $30 trillion. Now, 10 years from now, you're talking about 2035. There's an event most likely that's going to take place if this fib sequence holds true before that happens. And that's going to most likely be 2029.
Response to that is that the growth will generate enough income and that the tariffs will generate enough income to offset the revenue loss from the tax cuts. I'm doubtful about that. And certainly I think one of the major failings of this bill is.
No, I think he's not paying attention. It's $2 trillion over 10 years. You're going to get more than $500 billion every year in growth in GDP. So in 2 years, you already have $1 trillion. In 4 years, you have another trillion on top of that. That's 2 trillion. Now, if he's saying that there's going to be 2 trillion in deficit or 3 trillion, then you're talking about within a 2.5 year period, you've made up the difference. 2.5 years, you've made up the difference based on a 10-year projection for, quote, debt. The economy is going to grow for sure. But I think it's going to grow, because there's going to be this influx of activity, there's going to be a boom. And then usually when there's a boom and bust cycle. And I think that this boom and bust cycle may rear its head. This down cycle of the boom will be in 2029. And then it will be harmful for the economy, and there's going to have to be a readjustment. And depending on the reasons why, I think it's going to be a combination of financial engineering that's tied to debt that couldn't be paid because of higher unemployment because of the implementation of AI. And there'll have to be laws in place that actually curtails the use of AI. Or some radically new thing that is out of the realm of our imagination at this moment in time. Universal income doesn't make sense because that is just, what do you do when you don't have a job? How do you pay your bills? Oh, you just get a universal income. Well, you can't just keep on printing your way to prosperity. You have to have some sort of input, labor input, or investment input. So everyone's going to be an investor. Everyone's going to be Joe Wall Street. I don't think so. So something doesn't make sense with the universal income. And that's the scary part with what Ayn Rand was suggesting in Atlas Shrugged. Collectivism will lead to tyranny. You have to understand the individual. The individualism is the way to go. Now the question comes in is when there's massive layoffs because of AI, what this means. What this balance between labor and capital. What happens? I don't think any economist really knows for sure what happens. I suspect that when it comes home to roost, it comes home to roost in 2029.
It adds to the deficit rather than reducing the deficit, which is badly needed. Now, the question of when we'll pay the piper, Jamie Dimon, probably the most influential banker in the country, gives us 6 weeks to 6 years.
I'm not so worried about the deficit. I'm worried about the debt. The deficit is based on your annual budget. The debt is $36 trillion more. And paying that down is an important issue. So maybe he's just not using the right word here. I'm not sure. I'm not worried about deficit. I'm worried about debt. The debt is what is the problem. And the only way to cut down the debt is to grow the economy and reduce social programs. And that is cutting Social Security, cutting Medicare, and cutting Medicaid. That's the only way out of this.
So stay tuned.
Yeah, well, and also, I mean, it could be someone else's problem, couldn't it? It could be after Trump leaves office. But I mean, if this agenda works, do you think it will prove a model for other countries? If, say, Labour gets kicked out of power here, the right wing here, and, in other countries in Europe going to look at this and try and replicate it?
I think it's going to be difficult because the hatred of Trump is so
Intense.
tremendous. It's intense. That's a very good word. Thank you. Trump derangement syndrome. That even conservative politicians won't say, "Oh boy, look, we're going to do to Britain what Trump did to America." I think that if it works, that it gets more people into work in order to get benefits. There will be some modeling of this, but I'm doubtful. I just don't think that. I don't think you can transfer a lot of these policies from one country to another. You get some benefit, but not a lot.
Interesting. Owen Stelzer, thanks very much for joining us. Owen obviously writes for the Sunday Times.
Can't transfer it to other countries because other countries may not have that whole entrepreneurial, individualistic aspect of their society. Britain is not the United States. Germany is not the United States. Italy is not the United States. Japan's not the United States. China is not the United States. So you have to have a combination of certain ingredients for this to work. It's not as simple as just to have a big, beautiful bill. There's also some sort of social ethos of hard work and determination, self-determination, individualism. All right, let's go to the next video. But before we do, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the deodorants that I have. They're for males and females. You can get it in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree, or in citrus. Very high quality, has no aluminum, has no baking soda. They help to detoxify your body. Use it as a daily product or as a deodorant, but you're daily detoxifying your body. It's made from essential oils from the Himalayas, very high quality product. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the deodorants. I also have gel, either in the quick dispenser or in the tube form. Have some at work, have some at home. You never know when you need it. You can use it as an aftershave. You can use it as a daily skincare. If you're not feeling well or someone around you is not feeling well, put it on your hands, around your mouth, around your eyes, around your nose, around your ears. Lightly coat your nostrils. It stays active for 5.5 hours. If you have an abrasion, a cut, or a minor burn, put it on that wound and it will help to heal it. Please go to my store and get the gel. It's very high quality. Be prepared. You're going to need it. Trust me. And clarity factor. Clarity factor will help to get rid of that brain fog so you're not a crazy liberal. And clarity factor will allow you to concentrate on your tasks, no matter what age you are, at work or at school, or even if you're retired. And clarity factor will help to improve your memory, to help support memory, over time, it will help to improve those dendritic connections so you have better neuroplasticity, a positive neuroplasticity. You'll be able to think faster, you'll have better memory, and your concentration will be improved. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the clarity factor, make sure you drink it with filter. And Myotrol helps to build muscle. When you get older, if you're 40 years of age or older, you have a hard time building muscle and maintaining muscle. Myotrol will help with the gene expression to build muscle and maintain muscle and help with the health of your mitochondria. You need lots of energy to maintain muscle. And if you look at people that are starting to get older, they have problems with gaining muscle, they have atrophy, they lose bone density, their energy levels start to decline, they start building up free radicals. Well, you need to reverse all of that. And one of the anti-aging methods is to build muscle and to build up your energy levels. Myotrol will help with the gene expression. It has polyphenols, flavonoids, and lignans to help with that gene expression. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the Myotrol, do resistance training, and slow down the aging process. And again, if you're 40 years of age or older, you need to start reducing the stress on your pancreas. Take digestive enzyme complex to break up those proteins, carbohydrates, and lipids. That way you'll be able to absorb your nutrients and you have less load on your pancreas. Very important. This also has bromelain in it. It's fibrinolytic, so it breaks up clots. And digestive enzyme complex, it has proteolytic enzymes to be able to break up glycoproteins. Super important back in 2020. That's why I told everybody, take digestive enzyme complex. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the digestive enzyme complex, the Myotrol, the clarity factor. That would be a very good stack. You're helping with your brain function, you're helping with your muscle, and you're helping with your pancreas. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. If you spend $150 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last.
Discover Luca Faloni's denim shirt. Crafted in Italy from luxurious denim for a robust yet soft
The left's new star, Zoran Mamdani, is a perfect fit for today's Democratic Party. He's a socialist. He has a long history of anti-Semitism and casually throws around, racist ideas such as taxing white neighborhoods. And now he's got another resume enhancer for the Democratic Party. He's a complete fraud. During the campaign, he touted his credentials as the first Muslim and South Asian elected official.
When you grow up as someone, especially in the third world, you have a very different understanding of the Palestinian struggle.
I also say this as the first South Asian elected official, the first Muslim elected official to ever run for mayor.
Me, someone who stands to be the first immigrant mayor of this city in generations, someone who would also be the first Muslim and the first South Asian mayor in this city's history.
Yeah, but the New York Times did some actual reporting and found out they didn't always identify himself this way. According to the Times, on his college application at Columbia University, he identified himself as Asian and as Black and African American. As the Times notes, quote, Columbia, like many elite universities, used a race-conscious affirmative action admissions program at the time. Reporting that his race was Black or African American in addition to Asian could have given him an advantage. We asked about the application. Mamdani defended his choice to identify as Black. He was born in Uganda and said there wasn't an option for Indian Ugandans on the application. Mamdani was not accepted into Columbia, but he told the New York Times that he filled out all of the college applications the same way. But actual Black New Yorkers aren't buying any of these excuses. According to the New York Post, a longtime local who asked not to be identified said, quote, he's a fraud. He ain't no African American. And a Bronx resident named Joshua said, quote, he's a liar, point blank, period. Mamdani lost the Black vote to Andrew Cuomo in the primary, and given the scandal, the race for mayor is far from over. For more, let's welcome in New York Congresswoman Nicole Maliotakis. Congresswoman, thank you for joining us. Mamdani is taking advice from Elizabeth Warren when he filled out his college application, I guess, and that's why he did what he did.
Look, I think nobody really knows who this guy is. I think that's the bottom line. He's only been a citizen for 7 years. He's been an assembly member, but somebody who was not really well known, only for a couple of years. And I think the more people learn about him, the more they are concerned. I mean, this is obviously somebody who will say or do anything to get elected or to get into college. But aside from that, it's his policies that are incredibly dangerous. I mean, he wants to turn New York City into a little communist Cuba. He wants to seize the means of production, which is right out of Karl Marx's communist playbook.
This is why I was saying in previous videos that we need to learn from Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand wrote Atlas Shrugged. And she warned people about the evils of collectivism and the erosion of individualism. She warned that socialistic policies are going to erode the manufacturing base, and manufacturers and producers are going to leave. They're going to just leave. Who's holding up the world? The producers. Not the consumers, the producers. And when the producers stop, and when big government takes over, the world falls. When there's no incentive to be a capitalist, the capitalists just leave. They'll find a different place. And so socialism is going to destroy major areas of the country. They'll start in these high density areas like New York and Chicago and LA. And those socialistic policies will take hold and erode, and then people will leave. And then people will want their freebies, and then these cities will end up like 1980, 1970 Detroit, Michigan. The inner city of Detroit started to falter because of these welfare policies. And the whites left the city. And the home prices went down, and the city started burning, literally, every year. Something similar is going to happen to New York if they allow for this to take hold. Now, I don't think that Mamdani is going to win, but it's going to be close. He could win. It's going to be very close. I'm hoping that Adams wins. Is Adams the perfect mayor? No, but way better than this communist. So we have to learn from Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand said, be weary of collectivism. Be cognizant of the problems of socialism and communism. You have to think in the terms of individuals. Where's John Galt? That's the rallying cry to making sure that we in New York do not get Mamdani. Where's John Galt? Some snot-nosed person is going to tell you that socialism is going to work. Where you look at the ash heap of history with the Soviet Union, or Fidel Castro. I think Cuba's doing real well. Is this what we want? But what happens is that the young are having problems. They're having problems getting a good job. They're having problems paying for food and for housing in a very expensive part of the country. Maybe these younger people should not be living in New York. Maybe they need to live in a different area. That's one issue. Another is that there's not enough incentives to actually build affordable housing in New York. I've mentioned this on a different video, where I think that the incentive, when they're building new condos, what's happening is it's like maybe 20% are considered lower income level housing, which is at $800,000. And, anything about 80% of the building is higher income. So $1 million, $1.2 million, $1.3 million or more. So if they have 100 units, only 20 of those units are going to be, quote, lower income. There needs to be more incentive to make it a 50-50, or even preferably it flipped, where 20% of the building is higher income and 80% is lower income at different tiers. Maybe the mid tier is at 800, and then another lower tier is at 500,000. Then you have a lot of builders that say, well, we'll do that, but we'll make the units only 200 or 300 square feet. Try to live in 200 or 300 square feet and pay $500,000 for it. That's crazy. That's fucking crazy. So these builders, there needs to be pushback on the builders to make 800 or 1,000 square feet units that are affordable, that are in the $5,000 to $6,000 range. They won't do it though. They won't do it because they want ungodly amounts of margin. So that's a big problem. But socialism isn't the answer. Taking over your grocery stores, that's not the answer. Now, I personally believe that, and I'm a capitalist, but the thing is that uber wealth needs to be taxed at a much higher rate, 50% or maybe even more. And when I say uber, I'm talking 50 billion, 100 billion, 200 billion, 400 billion, right? Now, people would say, if you tax the uber wealthy, you're not paying for the deficit, and that's not going to help pay down the debt. That's not the point. The point is that you're reducing the power of the uber wealthy because they use that money to lobby. Look at what's happening with Elon Musk. He was butthurt, and now he's thinking about starting a new political party. And because he has so much money, he can bankroll it. If he didn't have all that money, he wouldn't be able to bankroll it. Uber wealth leads to individuals using K Street to do their bidding. And you, the normal citizen, loses out. Your voice is drowned out by all this money. But I still believe in capitalism. I still believe in individualism. And this is the reason why Mamdani is rising up in the polls, because the younger individual One doesn't have the historical understanding because they didn't learn it in school, nor do they have the world life experience because they're too young. But socialistic policies are not productive in the long run. But there are problems in New York. The cost of food is too expensive. The housing, too expensive. If a builder wants to build in New York, there needs to be more incentives to produce lower cost housing that is affordable and not with a footprint of 200 to 300 square feet, right? The answer isn't smaller. The answer is cheaper. But younger people need to realize that maybe they shouldn't even be in the city. Maybe the city doesn't need you anymore.
Somebody wants to take over New York City supermarkets. I imagine he wants to ration food as well. I mean, this is somebody who is completely a leftist like we've never seen in New York, and we've had the likes of Bill de Blasio and others. It's really concerning. I think the more people get to know him, and I'm hopeful, more people get to know him, the more we'll make sure that he is rejected at the ballot box come November.
Yeah, that's right. Well, November is a long way away. Congresswoman, thank you for joining us, of course. A disturbing new poll reveals that the growing anti-Semitism on the left in 2017, 42% of Democrats supported Israel, but that has completely flipped. And now just 12% of Democrats support the Jewish state. So unfortunately, it's not surprising Democrats elected Mamdani to represent them. He has a long history of saying things like this.
Business as usual cannot continue.
Tesla is finished. Elon has failed. That is what they want you to believe. But tech expert Jeff Brown, who told everybody to buy Tesla.
Business as usual cannot continue any longer. It is so important that we do not cede any ground to apartheid. You don't have to go to Gaza to stand with Gaza. You can stand with Gaza by taking action right here in New York City.
And when asked recently if he would condemn calls to globalize the Intifada, he refused.
Do you condemn that phase, globalize the Intifada, which a lot of people hear as a call to violence against Jews?
I don't believe that the role of the mayor is to police speech.
Wow, Congresswoman, how concerned should Jewish New Yorkers be if this man is elected mayor?
And it goes much further. He wouldn't even put his name on a resolution commemorating a remembrance for the Holocaust. I mean, that's how extreme he is. It is really sad. It's scary. And I imagine for particularly our Jewish friends and neighbors here in New York City, when they've seen anti-Semitism skyrocket here in the city of New York. And sadly, New York leads the nation in terms of anti-Semitic incidents and hate crimes. And we saw what happened on our college campuses at Columbia University, at NYU, at others. And yet we're going to have a mayor who is certainly not going to take the side of the Jewish people, not even take a side, but just condemn this type of activity and really stand up and hold these institutions accountable, make sure our cops are empowered to do their jobs if there's violence that comes or hate crimes that are conducted. That's my concern more than anything, because he already wants to get rid of the police.
Yeah.
He's already saying he wants to defund our police, and the police are responding by saying they're going to leave the city. And so if we see more cops retire from our city, we're already down at least 7,000 cops from where we were on September 11, 2001. More cops being driven out by this city. You know, he's open about being a defund the police guy, but really what they've been doing in New York City for the last few years is actually driving them out and not replacing them. So really it's the same thing. They just don't call it defund the police anymore. So I'm very concerned about somebody like this who's not going to take crimes, whether it's against our Jewish neighbors or anybody else in our city, seriously, and certainly concerned about somebody who's not going to condemn anti-Semitism as we've seen on our streets and in our college campuses.
Congresswoman, Mamdani also seems to be prioritizing illegal aliens over New Yorkers. Here's what he said recently.
And unlike the current mayor, I'm not going to be working alongside the Trump administration to build the single largest deportation force in American history.
We have to stand up and fight back. The NYPD's job is to create public safety in the city, not to assist ICE agents.
Congresswoman, if Mamdani is elected mayor and obstructs ICE officials from doing their job, he may be in for a rude awakening from President Trump.
In his nomination speech, said he will defy ICE and will not allow ICE to arrest criminal aliens in New York City. Your message to communist Zoran Mamdani?
Well, then we'll have to arrest him. Look, we don't need a communist in this country, but if we have one, I'm going to be watching over him very carefully.
Congresswoman, as funny as it is there a danger in the president elevating Mamdani? I mean, this guy seems to be running against Donald Trump rather than any of the other mayoral candidates.
Well, that's what they do in New York City. But people should appreciate what President Trump has done for our city since taking office. He has deported thousands of criminals, gang members, drug traffickers, the migrant shelters that the taxpayers were funding to the tune of billions of dollars and start to shut down. The Floyd Bennett Field, our national park in Brooklyn that was turned into a migrant encampment, has also been closed. I did a Freedom of Information Law request, and we found 16,000 crimes committed by about 4,000 migrants that were in these shelters being funded by the taxpayers. And the majority of them were actually one of the top 7 felonies. So President Trump has stepped in here and has made our city safer. If we're going to have a mayor like this guy who's going to come in and not cooperate with ICE, not allow them to be in Rikers Island to actually just, hand over criminals, and then they go and complain about the ICE raids.
Right.
We wouldn't need ICE raids if the city cooperated and just turned over the criminals upon arrest. It's as simple as that. You don't want ICE raids? Then just cooperate and turn over the bad guys. Don't release them back onto the streets.
Absolutely. Congresswoman, pivoting quickly, I want to get your thoughts on the big, beautiful bill. You've had a very busy week on the Hill this past week, and this is now the law of the land. Tell us a little bit about how New Yorkers are going to benefit from this legislation, and will its effects help swing New York in the right come 2026?
Well, I was happy to join President Trump yesterday for that bill signing. As a House Ways and Means member, the tax portion is what I focus a lot of my time on. This is going to benefit New Yorkers. Number one, we're getting the SALT deduction back. It is now quadrupled. That is significant. The Democrats in New York have hammered our residents with property taxes, income taxes. We're giving people more of their hard-earned money to keep in their pockets by giving them that SALT deduction so they don't have to pay twice. That's number one. Number two, seniors in our city are going to benefit tremendously. 88% of seniors across the country, about 51 million of them, are going to see their tax liability on Social Security eliminated because we're giving that deduction at the end of the year that will cover whatever you paid in Social Security. Again, we had to do it this way because we can't change Social Security law. So the Democrats are already trying to act like we didn't take care of that no tax on Social Security. We did. We just had to do it with a deduction at the end of the year. But again, 88% of our seniors will benefit from that. There are other substantial things. If you are a tipped worker, if you work overtime, if you are a working American middle-class family or senior citizen, you benefit from this bill. This bill was never focused on the billionaires and the millionaires like the Democrats claim. It's focused on the hardworking Americans that get up every day, they work hard, and you know what? They pay taxes, they're trying to care for their family. They were slammed by Biden inflation and the Democrats in states like mine.
Yeah.
And once again, President Trump is delivering relief. Last time, he gave an across-the-board income tax cut, which is now permanent. The child tax credit is increasing. The standard deduction is increasing further. He has done tremendous things, and people are going to see the economic benefit and also the job creation. That's going to give Americans opportunity to move up and have their wages increase as well.
Congresswoman Nicole Maliotakis, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
A trick using pink salt, ice, and water went viral on.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the vitamin C and magnesium. This is a dual-purpose supplement. It's going to help with your skin, help with the efficacy of D3, because magnesium helps with that efficacy for D3. And vitamin C and magnesium will help to boost up your immune system. Also take magnesium and zinc, boosts up your immune system and helps with your brain function. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and take the magnesium and zinc and the vitamin C and magnesium, boost up that brain function, help with your skin, help with the efficacy of vitamin D3. You can stack them together for max benefit. Omega-3 will help with your cardiovascular health. It'll help to control your your lipid profile, bring down LDL levels and increase your HDL levels. That's really important to reduce plaque formation. Omega-3 will bring down systemic inflammation, and omega-3 will help to reduce over clotting with your red blood cells. So please go to my store and get the omega-3. Very important for cardiovascular health. Resveratrol, I've been taking for decades, helps the health of your cells by soaking up free radicals, improving the health of the mitochondria. You're going to have more energy. You're going to have youthful gene expression. It helps to get rid of senescent cells. And over time, what you're going to notice is that your tissues are performing better because they're younger, because of the youthful gene expression. Resveratrol, you get the max benefit of it when you stack it with C60, NAD+, ubiquinol, clarity factor. These are really powerful stacks. So please go to my store, get the resveratrol, and stack it. And vitamin B complex, super important to take if you're 40 years of age or older. Vitamin B complex, the first 4 B vitamins will help with your mitochondria through the electron transport chain, so your ATP will go up, so you have more energy. Your cellular metabolism will improve, so the cells will perform better. And vitamin B12 will help protect your neurons. Protect your neurons and boost up that cellular metabolism and energy levels. Super important. A lot of people don't realize that if in 5 years, right, you're going to start noticing in your social media lots of people starting to have issues with their brain. They're going to have Parkinsonian type tremors. They're going to have gait issues, balancing problems, memory loss, concentration issues, slowness of their speech. All these are signs of cognitive decline. In 5 years, you're going to start noticing it within your social circle. So it's really important to boost up that brain function. That's why it's so important to take magnesium from my store, get it in the vitamin C magnesium or the magnesium and zinc, and stack it with the vitamin B complex and the clarity factor. Protect those neurons. Super important. 5 years, you're going to start noticing your friends and family having brain issues. Better start paying attention and start mitigating the issue. All right, let's go to the Texas flood right now.
Big ideas don't come easy.
At least 51 people, including 15 children, died when flash flooding ripped through parts of Texas. A frantic search continues to find 27 children who were swept away while staying at a Christian summer camp in Kerr County on the edge of the Guadalupe River. These pictures from the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department show the sheer impact of the floodwaters, with debris strewn across the river as it heads downstream. The Guadalupe River burst its banks during heavy rain in an area near Camp Mystic, northwest of San Antonio. Officials say the river rose more than 5 meters in just 45 minutes. Our correspondent Gary O'Donoghue sent this report.
The torrential rain early Friday morning took everyone by surprise. In some places between 12 and 15.
At least 51 people, including 15 children. These pictures from the Texas Parks and summer camp in Kerr County on the edge of the Guadalupe River. These pictures from the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department show the sheer impact of the floodwaters, with debris strewn across the river as it heads downstream. The Guadalupe River burst its banks during heavy rain in an area near Camp Mystic, northwest of San Antonio. Officials say the river rose more than 5 meters in just 45 minutes. Our correspondent Gary O'Donoghue sent this report.
The torrential rain early Friday morning took everyone by surprise. In some places between 12 and 15 inches fell in a matter of a couple of hours as the Guadalupe River rose by 26 feet in 45 minutes, its second highest level on record. Among the terrible devastation wrought by the floodwaters, a glimmer of good news. These people among the hundreds who've been rescued. But for many families, the anxious wait continues, gathered at centres around the town of Kerrville, hoping for news of those still missing. Much of the focus is on a camp for young Christian girls close to the Guadalupe River. 750 children were staying here. At least 24 girls are still missing. State and federal officials, including the Secretary for Homeland Security, have said nothing will be spared to find those still missing.
The number one priority now is people, is making sure we're finding people as fast as possible and we're returning them to their families.
You can see this house has been completely washed away by the water. Just the foundations left where I'm standing. And over here, beyond this blue-green house, through the trees is the red roof that was on this house. And we've just spoken to some relatives of the people who lived in this house who were here. And they told us that of the 5 people that were here when the water came, 2 are unaccounted for, including a young toddler.
You gotta keep hope, I guess, that I can't believe that they're gone unless, someone actually told me, I would have hope that they're still out there somewhere.
As we were speaking to Jonathan and Brittany, relatives of those who'd been in this house, a neighbour dashed up. She found the piggy bank or money jar for one of the boys who'd been in the house and had survived.
Yeah, at least give it to.
My sister give it to me, they're gonna go see him in the hospital today.
This will be a long and painstaking recovery operation, with the local authorities unable to say just how many visitors there were in the area at the time because of the 4th of July holiday weekend. A normally joyous moment for this country, marking its independence, marred by tragedy.
The governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, said he had signed an expanded disaster declaration to help search and rescue efforts and requested assistance from the Trump administration.
We will be relentless in going after and ensuring that we locate every single person who's been a victim of this flooding event. We're not going to stop today or tomorrow. We will stop when the job is completed. President Trump, he loves Texas for one. He's deeply concerned about all the families who've been affected, but also knows about the magnitude of the devastation that we're suffering. And so what I'm about to sign now is going to be the first step in a process. This document is a request for a federal disaster declaration coming from the governor to seek the immediate and ongoing help of the federal government.
Andrew Dessler is a professor of atmospheric sciences at Texas A&M University. He predicts that more extreme weather will become the norm and says unless elected officials acknowledge that, there will be more problems.
I think that we need to accept that we're going to be living in a world with more extreme weather, and we have to be planning for it. And that is a problem when your elected officials won't admit that the climate is changing. And so I think we've got a real public policy problem given the many elected representatives in the U.S. And until you admit that things are changing and start coming up with a plan of how to deal with it, you're really just damned to continue to repeat this.
Well, despite the suffering, there have been remarkable tales of survival as well. Scott Walden and his wife live in Kerrville, where they were washed away, Kerrville, beg your pardon, where they were washed away as floodwaters quickly inundated their home.
About 6:30 in the morning or 6 o'clock in the morning, we heard some thumps. I had a shed around the corner, and the shed started banging against the house. And my wife jumped up and she looked out the back and she said, "There's a river back there." And so we ran to the front. And by the time we grabbed 2 dogs and a set of keys, the water had risen, covered 4 motorcycles, and flooded a Jeep, and then flooded a big truck. By the time, over the last 5 minutes, the water went from right there to right here. And then another 10 minutes, the water was like this high. It was scary. It was really scary. The big question was, what do we do? And, things were getting dicier by the moment. We couldn't tell if the water was going to continue to rise. So I said, we need to get out of the house. So I grabbed my wife And we literally jumped in the water and it swept us down to about 200 feet down that way. And there was a crepe myrtle tree that we grabbed hold of and we waited for rescue. I literally pulled up my waterproof phone and started calling people going, hey, get Swiftwater Rescue to come get us because we are like in extremis. We are in bad shape. I never knew that it could do that. I've seen it come up a little bit. I've seen it cover over the hike and bike trail there, but I've never seen it go up any further than that. And yeah, this is like a once in, I don't know, 200-year kind of flood.
Wow.
We'll keep you updated.
Amazing. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the cleanse. This is a 30 parts per million solution. Take a teaspoon a day, swish in your mouth, gargle about 20 seconds or so, then swallow. What that will do is improve your oral cavity and your oral pharynx, help with your epithelial lining, and help with your mucosal barrier and boost up your immune system. Taking good night formula, super important to consolidate memory, detoxify your central nervous system, and to be well rested. This will help you to get into the cycles of REM sleep and deep sleep to allow for you to be well rested and consolidate that memory and detoxify your central nervous system. This has GABA and passion flower, tryptophan and melatonin. Take it every night. And that, if you do that on a regular basis, you're going to slow down the aging process and your neural function will improve. Turmeric brings down inflammation, helps with your immune system and your cardiovascular system. It also soaks up free radicals. Ashwagandha root controls your cortisol levels and your blood glucose levels, brings down inflammation, very important for your vascular system and your immune system. Lignans helps with your endocrine system and your immune system by soaking up free radicals, bringing down inflammation. So please go to my store, take the lignans, the ashwagandha, and the turmeric. This is a very powerful stack to help with your cardiovascular health and your immune system. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order. If you spend $150 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last.
Whether it's billionaires controlling our government, controlling our newspapers, or controlling our social media, the end result is always the same. A media industry that...
Spring and Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, welcome to Fox News Sunday, Mr. Secretary. Good to have you.
Good to see you.
Okay, so let's start with the bill. You wrote a piece over at foxnews.com, an op-ed, and you say one of the main issues is ending illegal immigration as a key part of this. It's about redirecting an estimated $249 billion in annual wages paid to people here in the U.S. illegally, to those who are here legally, or to American citizens. You say this: ending the black market of undocumented labor by funding enforcement of our existing immigration laws will result in a massive pay raise for the working class. So that begs the question then, if that's the case, if there are higher wages, businesses are going to have to pass that on somewhere else. Does that end up then with the American consumer?
Well, I don't think it has to. And look, what we saw was this mass unfettered immigration across the border, whether it's 12 or 22 million people who came in, suppressed working people's wages. And for 20 years, the big lie was that this kind of immigration didn't hurt working people. Now, economists have come out and said, oh, what a surprise. Even laws of supply and demand work in the low-end labor market. So I talked about in that editorial what I call parallel prosperity, that for years, Wall Street has done well. Now it's time for Main Street to do well, and they can both do well. And that's the one big, beautiful bill. That's the beauty of this. It helps Wall Street and Main Street.
So let's talk about those jobs, because there are skeptics who say, the American workers and those who say who are sort of their wages depressed, that they're not going to step up and take some of these jobs. Here's a bit of analysis from libertarian leading Cato Institute. They say the U.S. labor market remains tight, and there are simply not millions and millions of idle American workers sitting on the sidelines just itching to take these newly opened jobs. To the extent Trump's broad deportation promises come to fruition, we can expect many immigrant-dependent industries to suffer and few American workers to gain. So is it overly optimistic to think there are Americans who will flood to these jobs?
I don't think that it's overly optimistic to believe that at a price, Americans will do these jobs. But, you know, again, with these depressed wages, we've seen a lot of people drop out of the workforce, especially men aged 16 to 35 are in an era of despondency. And they have dropped out of the workforce. They are having health issues. They're having mental health issues. And I think that they will come back in. And look, this is part of President Trump's agenda. We're doing peace deals, trade deals, and tax deals. And the trade deals and the tax deals are going to bring back working class jobs with good wages, with good health care.
So let's talk about tariffs, because obviously we're hitting this deadline. We think this week the president's talked about sending out letters to a number of our top trading partners about, listen, if you can't get a deal, kind of this is the drop dead deadline. We are going to drop a new set of tariffs come August 1st. So is it fair to say there's a bit of a pause on the July 9th deadline for some of these trading partners? Who do you think is getting these letters first?
Well, Shannon, I don't think it's a bit of a pause, because I think what's happened is there's a lot of congestion going into the home stretch. And as part of the trade team, what's great about having President Trump on side is he's created maximum leverage. So by telling our trading partners that they could boomerang back to the April 2nd date, I think it's really going to move things along the next couple of days and weeks.
Okay, so let's talk about some analyses on these tariffs from the AP. They see this. A JP Morgan Chase Institute analysis finds a critical group of U.S. employers would face a direct cost of $82.3 billion from President Donald Trump's current tariff plans. They go on to say the investment bank Goldman Sachs said in a report expects companies to pass 60% of their tariff costs onto consumers. Our most recent poll shows that 57% of Americans do think that tariffs are going to hurt the U.S. economy. So some of the experts, everyday Americans, they have real concerns about how this is going to cost them. What's your message to them?
Well, I think
First of all, first of all, you got to look at it in thirds. There's a tariff. Let's say coming from China. Let's use that as an example. There's a good that's coming from China. 1/3 of the tariff is going to be absorbed by the actual maker, the producer. Another third is going to be absorbed at the wholesale value, or at the retail value, I should say. And then another third will be absorbed by the consumer. So it's not going to be the full amount. Let me repeat. China's going to make a good. Let's say the iPhone. The iPhone is going to come in with a certain, let's say 30% tariff, just for simple math here. 30% tariff. 10% of that tariff, of that 30%, all right, 1/3 of the 30%, 10, is going to be absorbed by the maker in China. The maker is going to pay the tariff. Apple is going to absorb another third because they have such a high margin on these devices. All right. So that's another 10% of the 30. And then the consumer is going to have, well, see a 10% increase. So if an iPhone is selling at, let's say, $1,000, the iPhone is going to go up $100. That's what's going to happen.
Out there, I think TDS, Trump Derangement Syndrome, has turned into Tariff Derangement Syndrome. As soon as you call them the Trump tariffs, 90% of Democrats hate them. And I'm going to have to disagree with Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan. The empirical data shows that we have seen no inflation thus far, and we'll see over the coming months. And there's a big difference in inflation and a one-time price adjustment.
See? The inflation isn't in the data yet. But most likely, it will be muted compared to what all these economists are suggesting. Not all of it is going to be passed to the consumer. And you got to keep in mind that the reason why these goods were being made in China was because of the labor arbitrage. They're making these goods at a very cheap price. And therefore, the margins are extremely high. For Apple, for example. Apple's margins on the iPhone are extremely high. If it's selling a phone for $1,000, it's costing less than $100 to make it. Really? That's what's floating Apple, is overpriced iPhones.
Inflation is a generalized monetary phenomenon. We're not going to see that. And thus far, we haven't even seen the one-time price adjustments. What we are seeing, the business model for many of our trading partners, especially in Southeast Asia, is to produce. And the manufacturers in those countries are taking the price increases into, or the tariffs into their margins.
So let's talk about some of the specifics, because the EU, you've talked about that's notoriously difficult because you've got, 27 different entities that are feeding into this conversation. They've got a lot of leverage, frankly. They have talked about the fact that they're ready for retaliatory tariffs if this new level kicks in. I know there were talks over the weekend. Where are we with them?
It's moving along. We'll see where we go. They came to the table late. President Trump brought them to the table about 3 weeks ago with the threat of 50% tariffs. That got an immediate reaction from about 5 of the national leaders, and he had a call with Ursula von der Leyen right after. So we're getting much more fulsome negotiations. But Shannon, I would disagree with you. The leverage here is with the United States. We are the deficit country, the surplus country. The EU has a gigantic trading surplus with us. We have the leverage because their economy is much more export dependent than the US. In general, the US is a very large closed service economy that our imports are quite low. We're a big economy, which makes the deficit numbers big.
Let's talk about Japan. The president said this week, tough to make a deal with them. He said they're very spoiled. How's that going?
Japan, again, they are great allies. I think that there may be a nuance here that they have upper house elections on July 20th, and a lot of the things that they're talking about require legislation. So we may have to see what happens with those elections.
Okay, I want to ask you too about the Fed chair. The president has said this week, among other things, called Jerome Powell a moron. They are not besties at this point, it appears. There's speculation now that he may go ahead and announce a replacement for him way early, since his term is not up until next May. Wall Street Journal reporting this: an early announcement could allow the chair in waiting to influence investor expectations about the likely path for rates, like a backseat driver attempting to steer monetary policy before Powell's term ends. You have demurred on whether you would be the guy for that job, but what do you think is the impact of all of this public back and forth with the Fed chair?
Well, Jenna, I'm a basketball fan, and in basketball, there are 2 schools of working the refs. There's the Bobby Knight School and the Dean Smith School. Obviously, President Trump's more in the Bobby Knight School, and I will tell you, Bobby Knight won 3 national championships. Dean Smith only won 2, so working the refs seems to be effective.
So there may be some chair throwing.
Sorry?
What you're saying, there might be some chair throwing if we're going with the Bobby Knight School of how this is done.
That think about this. There are good candidates already on the Fed board who, for Fed chair, and they make their opinions known at every meeting. So I don't find that disruptive at all.
Okay, Mr. Secretary, great to have you with us. Thank you so much for the time.
Good to see you.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and detoxify your body every day by taking the zeolite. Zeolite will bind to heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals. Once it binds to them, it'll allow you to excrete it out through urination in 6 to 8 hours. Take it every day. Take 2 or 3 small drops underneath your tongue. Drink the filtered water, just small drops. Drink with filtered water and do that every day. Some people prefer a more intense detoxification. For those individuals, take 5 small drops or 10 small drops underneath your tongue, drink the filtered water, do that every day until the bottle is done, and do that once or twice a year. But it's important to detoxify your body. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Make sure you drink filtered water and stay away from processed foods. Vitamin D3 helps with gene expression because D3 is a cofactor for gene expression. D3 also helps to absorb calcium. D3 helps to get rid of cells that need to go into apoptosis. D3 has higher efficacy when you take magnesium. So please take the supplements that have magnesium in it on my store. By taking D3 and K2 together and doing resistance training and taking in calcium, I drink milk, but you can take a calcium supplement. When you do that resistance training, take the D3 and the K2, you're going to build denser bone. Very important. Now, D3 and K2 can also reduce the buildup of calcium deposits around plaque formation in your vascular system and slowly pull some of that out, some of that calcium depositing out. So taking D3 and K2 will help with your bone density and your cardiovascular health. And to supercharge that cardiovascular health, nattokinase. Nattokinase will help to control your lipid profile. It'll help to bring down LDL levels and increase your HDL levels. Lower LDL means less oxidized LDL, which means less plaque buildup. Nattokinase also breaks up clots. When you have blockage, a buildup of plaque in your vascular system, there's turbulence with the blood flow. And when there's too much turbulence, then you can get clot formation. You want to break up those clots right away. Take the nattokinase. So take the nattokinase, the D3 and the K2 together to supercharge the cardiovascular stack. So please go to my store, use discount 5. You get $5 off any order. If you spend $150 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last.
Imagine le soir et les splendeurs d'un verre fondé à ton temps.
Brooklyn and Queens, home to learners, creators, and leaders. We're here to keep them going strong. New York
is graduation season, and data shows that recent college and high school graduates face a tough road ahead. According to the Labor Department, the national unemployment rate for those new job seekers is nearly 7%, about the highest level in a decade outside of the pandemic. The environment is harsher for those without degrees. Recent high school grads averaged an unemployment rate of nearly 15% over the last 12 months. For more on that, let's bring in former Treasury official and Morning Joe economic analyst Steve Ratter, who's standing by the Southwest Wall with his charts. Steve, good to see you. And your first chart indeed breaks down that tough job market facing you grads. Tell us more.
Sure, Jonathan. Let's put a picture behind the words that you just went through. And you can see here unemployment rates going back to 2015 across the economy. And what you're referring to is recent college graduates, 5.8% unemployment rate. That is substantially higher than the U.S. average of 4.2% unemployment rate, and actually almost starting to catch up to the young Americans in general, where they're graduates.
This data set is 10 days old, not 10 years, 10 days old. Because of the job report that recently came out, the unemployment rate is at 4.1%.
Now, this is very different from what we've seen historically, put aside all the COVID statistical noise, but you can see how closely graduates have tracked the overall unemployment rate, and now you're starting to see some divergence. Why is that? We don't, of course, exactly know. There's talk that companies are starting to cut back on their hiring because of the economic uncertainty, the tariffs, the whatever. There's some suggestion that you may be seeing some effects of AI. Unemployment rate for computer programmers is actually higher than this. It's 6.1%. And that could be a factor here. Personally, I think in the long run, AI is a great thing. I heard you talking about it yesterday. I won't go down that direction today, but that could be a factor here. But nonetheless, that is where we sit. And that's against a picture in the U.S. of a changing set of views around the U.S. job market from not so plentiful up to 53%. It was only 30% as we came out of COVID. You can see the people who think it's plentiful down to 29%, up to almost 60% before COVID, and hard to get is inching up to 18%. And just one other small fact on this, we talk a lot about manufacturing jobs. There are actually 400,000 unfilled manufacturing jobs in this country at the moment, and yet you have people saying jobs aren't so plentiful. I think it's becoming clear that many Americans really don't actually want to go back into factories. That they're dirty. It's very routine work. And I think a lot of them are basically looking for other types of jobs. So as we think about our manufacturing policy and how many manufacturing jobs we really want to try to create here, it is helpful to keep this in mind.
Yeah, and that's one of the points that critics have made when they suggest that President Trump's tariff plan to build back manufacturing may be flawed. Steve, let's turn to chart 2 now. Noting here that unemployment may be rising.
Yeah, so, all economic data, when it's actually released by the Labor Department or the Commerce Department of the Federal Reserve, is by definition backward looking. It's a survey taken at some point in the past, whether it's a couple of weeks, whether it's a month, whatever. And so it's very hard to see turns in the economy. And I want to be careful today not to predict anything too dramatic. But there are a couple of things that are worth pointing out, which is that consumers who see the job market, of course, every time they go in looking for something, have become reasonably pessimistic themselves about the expectation of finding a job in 3 months if you lose one now. Only 51% believe that. And again, if you leave out the COVID stuff, you have to go all the way back to 2014 when we were still really coming out of the financial crisis to see that number down to the same level as it is today. So a lot of pessimism there. In terms of hard data, there is one statistical series, and again, I don't want to put too much weight on it, but I do want to mention it. Every week, people who are unemployed file for new unemployment insurance, and the Labor Department releases those numbers almost in real time. They're very current numbers. It's 1 week at a time, so the numbers are very squirrely, and therefore you have to be careful about predicting. But if you look at it across a 4-week average, so you smooth out some of the squirreliness, what you see is actually in the last few weeks, the average number of people applying for new unemployment insurance, i.e. people who recently lost their job or left their job, has gone up pretty substantially back to where it was in early 2023. Again, I want to be careful about making too much of this, but this is the kind of early data that economists look at when they start to as they're trying to figure out which way the economy is likely to go.
Okay, Steve, I'm going to show that first chart, by the way, to my son, who is a recent graduate in marine engineering and has applied for hundreds of jobs and can't get one in the same situation with friends of his. They're called, what David Brooks calls the rejection generation. It's a real thing. I'm glad to see the numbers on it. Okay, next chart that you have is the big bogeyman of economic policymakers, the prospect of growth declining, but inflation staying up. Tell us about that.
Yeah, and just on your first point, Kathy, one of the reasons I did these charts was because I had been hearing a lot of things like your son, a lot of examples like your son. And then when I looked in the data, I found out, lo and behold, there's actually support for what you hear anecdotally. But yes, back to this. So the Federal Reserve put out some numbers last week on its expectations for the economy that I think relative to everything I just talked about are worth noting. It took down GDP growth from...
If you've got pink salt, apple cider vinegar, and baking soda in your kitchen, and you're not using this recipe yet, you're throwing away your chance to lose weight effortlessly.
It took down GDP growth for this year from 1.7 to 1.4. This happens to match a World Bank number that came out a couple weeks ago. Two very impartial forecasters. I would note that in 2024, the economy grew 2.8%. So in year one of Trump, we are going to grow, at least on track to grow, exactly half of what we grew in the last year of Biden, ironically. They took down their growth number for 26 by a little bit, 27 they left alone, a long way away. Unemployment, similarly, they took up, apropos the conversation we were just having. They think it's now at 4.2. They think it's going to go to 4.5 by the end of the year. And these are changes from their last projections just 3 months ago. So this is how much the Fed is now a little more concerned about the economy than they were 3 months ago. And then even a bigger gap in
Let me give you my take on this. Okay. So the GDP growth, the Federal Reserve is predicting less growth for GDP. It was at 1.7 for 2025. Now they're thinking 1.4. I personally think that GDP growth is actually going to be higher, all right, than their 1.4, maybe even above the 1.7 for 2025, closer to 2. Why? Implementation of AI, and what you're going to start seeing is that companies are going to have better returns all right, when they do their earnings announcements. So what's going to happen is that we're probably going to see a higher GDP in 2025. This is annualized. So their 1.4, I suspect, is going to be at 1.8, maybe even 2 by year end. Now we won't know what that real number is until 2026 when they do the finalization of the data, because they do a preliminary, a secondary release, and then the final release of the GDP. But I suspect that the data is going to show that we're closer to 2 than to 1.4 for 2025. But I think a big part of that is because of AI and that these companies are going to be more efficient. Now, will unemployment start to tick up? Yes, I agree with that. I think their projection of it being closer to 4.7. Right now it's at 4.1. I think there's going to be a lot of people coming out of university that it's not going to be employed, or at least underemployed, and that you're going to have more companies reducing the new hires, even experienced new hires. So I would suspect that unemployment would creep up to 4.7. But you got to remember, 5% is natural unemployment rate historically in the United States. So it being at the 4% level for so long is actually an anomaly. So once it goes above 5, then you have a much bigger problem. So I think the Federal Reserve growth target is wrong. The unemployment target is right.
In 2026. And then inflation, on the other hand, and again, we have tariffs, I think, to thank for a lot of why the Fed adjusted its projections this way.
So for 2025, they think that that inflation is going to be at 2.8 and it's going to go up to 3. I think inflation is actually going to be less than 3, because I don't think the tariff effect is really going to take hold like they're thinking. So I think that their PCE inflation projection is wrong.
They now expect inflation using their measure. They have their own measure they like better than the CPI. I think it's
This is the reason. If your society is more productive, you can control that inflation. It's when the society becomes less productive. So we're at this point where AI is starting to make these institutions, corporations more productive. So that's going to suppress inflation. So you're going to have lower inflation, but you may actually have a tick up in unemployment. But as time goes on and unemployment starts to continue to go up, and those efficiencies start to plateau at the corporations, then you're going to start to see inflation start to tick up. So right now for 2025, I don't think we're going to have a 3% inflation. I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
This year from 2.7% in their last projection. And you can see if you go back to last September before the election, they thought inflation was going to be down almost to their 2% target. And then a bit more.
Yeah. So it's going to be closer to their original projection. It's going to be in between 2 to 2 and 2.2, not 3. Not 3. They're wrong on the PCE inflation.
In the out years as well. The 2% target is very important because that is their goal, and that is the level at which Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Fed, has said he wants inflation to be at in order to cut interest rates. Right. And so the Fed left its interest rate forecast for this year unchanged, which assumes a couple of 25 basis point or 1/4 percentage point cuts at the end of the year. But it does expect interest rates to remain higher than it had previously expected to, because it expects inflation to persist.
So if Powell, just think about this logic here. Their projection for the federal funds rate is gonna go down. Right now, the federal funds rate is at 4.25 to 4.5, it's a range. Something like that. All right, so they're saying that there's gonna be 2 cuts at the end of the year of 2025. Well, why would they do that if inflation is so high? And unemployment is only gonna go up to 4.5, not above 5. Why would they do that? Why would they cut? So either they're gonna cut and the real inflation number is actually a lot lower, which I think is the case. Or they're not gonna cut because inflation's at 3. Which one is it? You can't lower the rate and still have high inflation. Which one is it? The data doesn't make sense. The projections don't make sense. You don't lower rates when you have high inflation. It's political. What they're doing is political.
So I don't want to necessarily pronounce stagflation, but when you're moving towards slower growth, more unemployment, and somewhat higher interest rates, that is not the direction you want to be moving in.
Yeah, warning lights starting to flash, no doubt about that. Morning Joe economic analyst Steve Ryder, thank you so much for your analysis and your charts. We'll talk to you again soon.
So the big takeaway, inflation is probably going to be much less than 3% for 2025. Unemployment is going to tick up to maybe 4.7, maybe 4.6. It's at 4.1 right now. I think a big part of that is going to be the younger generation not being able to plug into the workforce. And any new hires any new positions for new hires in a corporation are going to be capped. They're going to control that. Now, there is a big concern about when you have AI, how is it going to affect the job market? I keep on saying that I'm concerned about capital and labor decoupling because of the AI revolution, if you want to call it that. And I think we're starting to see the rumblings of it right now. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But inflation, I don't think it's at 3%. I don't think the effects of tariffs are really going to manifest to any great degree. The big worry is the AI and the unemployment. Now the question is, maybe the unemployment rate is ticking up a little bit in the forecasts, but in the data it hasn't, because the unemployment rate is at 4.1. It was at 4.2, so unemployment went down. So it's at 4.1. So the data that came out recently is showing that the forecast is maybe wrong, right? But we still have another half a year to go. Now, it's possible that companies were like, well, we're going to hold off and see what happens with tariffs and hold off for 6 months and wait until their new budgets are approved and maybe do hiring in 2026. That could happen. And if that's the case, then you're going to have lower unemployment, less inflation, right? And then the question is, does the Federal Reserve lower rates or not? With a new Fed chair coming in, most likely they're going to have to lower rates. Plus the reissuance of debt, of U.S. debt through the bond market, they're going to need lower rates on top of that. My take is that you don't lower rates unless that the inflation, the PCE inflation, is actually at 2%, preferably below 2%. But that's my take on it. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the dual purpose supplement olive leaf extract. This is going to help with your cardiovascular health and your immune system. Olive leaf extract brings down inflammation. That's super important for your immune system and your cardiovascular system. Olive leaf extract also helps to control your lipid profile by lowering LDL levels and helping improve your HDL levels. That's important because you're reducing the chance of plaque formation. Ubiquinol is the most bioavailable form of CoQ10 that you can take. Most people that are taking CoQ10, you're most likely taking the wrong type. Ubiquinol is what you want to take. There's nothing better than what I have on my store for CoQ10. So get the Ubiquinol, and this is going to soak up free radicals because it's an antioxidant. It's going to help with the health of the mitochondria, so you're going to have more energy, and Ubiquinol protects neurons. Very important. If you're 40 years of age or older, you need to take ubiquinol, and I offer on my store the best ubiquinol that you can buy. There's nothing better. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. It's the-studio-reykjavik.com. And a good foundation is taking a multivitamin and a probiotic. The probiotic that I have is a powdered form that's in stock. Mix it with soft foods or with filtered water. Take it every day. And with a good gut biome, you're going to have a better metabolism. You're going to be able to break up your foods better. You're going to improve the mucosal lining of your gut. You're going to improve the concentration of your antibodies, your IgA antibodies, improve the communication between your gut and your liver and your gut and your brain. You're going to be able to sleep better. You're going to be able to concentrate better because it gets rid of that brain fog. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get this probiotic. It's very important as a foundational piece to build off of for your health protocol. All right, let's see here. Let's listen to this. This is dealing with college grads.
I ordered 200 hand-forged knives to my dorm room and built a Wix website to sell them. I'm Noah Rosen, founder and owner of.
The unemployment rate for new college grads has recently surged, and some economists say businesses are now replacing entry-level jobs with artificial intelligence. Here's CBS's Ali Bauman.
Front gate.
22-year-old Michael Macaluso just earned his degree in mechanical engineering from the University of Connecticut. But this summer, he's back helping manage his hometown pool. He hasn't found a job in his field despite applying for nearly 200 positions.
Did you have any expectations about what the job market would be like when you graduated?
I was told by a lot of people that I was going to get a job right out of college, and then all of a sudden, there's no jobs.
New research finds now, for the first time ever, the unemployment rate among recent college graduates has exceeded the national unemployment rate, ballooning to 6.6% over the past 12 months. Oxford Economics' Matthew Martin.
This is kind of goes against what you would expect. Those with higher educational attainment usually have better employment prospects than those with less educational attainment.
Martin's team believes companies are eliminating formative entry-level jobs. The work handed over to artificial intelligence. Tech companies are leading the way.
AI is permeating every aspect of our lives.
Nariman Farvardin, the president of Stevens Institute of Technology, says his school has been preparing for the AI revolution for the last 10 years. He expects disruption throughout the workforce will be bigger than the disturbance brought on by the introduction of the internet, and it could last up to 15 years.
I think AI has the potential to either augment or maybe totally replace jobs that are physically or cognitively repetitive. These jobs are not only done by entry people. There are certain people who do repetitive things for all of their life. Those jobs are in jeopardy.
Kaylee Totlin just graduated from Stevens with her computer science degree. She did an internship with Verizon as a sophomore, and the company has now hired her.
I think something that's important with entry-level jobs is the networking and the opportunities that you make from it.
Farvardin says his message to students today is the same as it always has been. Get an education that will last a lifetime.
We don't try to teach our students skills. We try to teach students a way to learn on their own for the rest of their lives.
He says workers who innovate alongside AI won't get left behind. Ali Bauman, CBS News, Eastchester, New York.
It's going to be a big problem. I'm telling you, AI is a big problem. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the collagen. Collagen is a dual purpose product. What it does is it'll help with your skin, your hair, your nails, your joints, your cartilage, your musculature, and your bones. Take it every day. It is a typical amino acid profile shown on the screen. You can read the label also on my website. Take it every day. This is a month supply. It's a powder. You get a big scooper, take it once a day, mix it with soft foods, filtered water, a smoothie, or even with milk, but take it every day. Do resistance training to get the max benefit. And Gladiator Barley. Gladiator Barley will help to build muscle, detoxify your body, bring down inflammation, and soak up free radicals through superoxide dismutase. It's a powder, it's a high density protein, very powerful stuff. Do resistance training to build muscle quicker, but you get added benefit. It's detoxifying your body every day, bringing down inflammation so you're going to recover quicker. And by bringing down inflammation, you're helping your vascular system and you're helping with your immune system. And bringing down free radicals through superoxide dismutase, you're slowing down the aging process. And with more muscle and taking Gladiator Barley and stacking it with Boomer Boost, you're also helping to control your A1C levels. Super important. So go to my store and get the Gladiator Barley and do resistance training. Please go to my store, use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. If you spend $150 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last.
Where can I find creators who actually drive results?
The unemployment rate for new.
This week, Microsoft announcing it is laying off nearly 4% of its workforce as it tries to refocus more on AI. CNBC contributor Mikal Livram is a Silicon Valley-based journalist. She joins us live this morning. We've also got CNBC's Steve Kovac here at the NASDAQ. Is this the beginning? We have the jobs number later, so that actually sort of plays into this whole situation. Do we believe that AI is the reason?
I think it's an excuse, maybe not a reason. I look at like what Mark Benioff said the other day, and he said 50% of our work right now is being done by artificial intelligence. If that was true, we'd be hearing about massive layoffs at Salesforce. We'd be hearing about huge improvements to margins and so forth. But we're hearing it increasingly. The Journal did a story on this yesterday, guys. They said, saying the quiet part out loud. Ford CEO is talking about it now. We had Andy Jassy from Amazon talking about it. Those Microsoft layoffs, though, yesterday, no word of AI. They did talk about efficiencies and things like that, leveraging technology, presumably AI, but it was mostly just getting rid of middle managers. AI can't replace that.
Mikal, what do you think?
So I agree, but I don't think the only options are AI or BS. I think there's a truth somewhere in the middle too. So
you can use AI to get rid of the entry level. You can use AI to get rid of the experienced tech worker, and you can use AI to get rid of middle management. Think about it. Let's say you're a CEO and instead of having a lot of directors, you want to cut the number of directors in half. You can use AI to restructure tasks for different divisions and use that as the director, and you have associate directors that are cheaper than the director reporting to the CEO or the COO. Right? So let's say you have a COO, and in a typical organization, you had a lot of directors, and you had assistant directors, and then you had the underlings, all right? Well, you can get rid of the director level or the associate level and use AI to help create tasks for the underlings. So you can get rid of middle management too. The reality of the situation, you can have your CEO actually as an AI.
I don't believe that these are job losses due to AI, that AI is taking over jobs. And yes, totally agree that we would see a bloodbath if that was really starting to happen. I do think it's the result of the company.
The bloodbath is going to be trickle, and then it'll speed up. All right? It's called phase transition. All right? You look at ice, all right? And ice is at a certain temperature that keeps it cold and keeps it in a solid state. And you start to increase the temperature. You have to increase it to a certain threshold point before you see liquid, a phase transition. Same thing with liquid water. You have to increase the temperature up to a certain point before you see vapor, before you see gas, before it boils, right? So there's these points in time where there's this point where there's a phase transition, but before that phase transition, it's kind of a slow process. Sometimes it's a fast process, depending on sublimation and all this. But in general, phase transitions seem to be stable, seem to be in homeostasis, and then all of a sudden it changes from solid to liquid or from liquid to gas. Same thing in the job market with AI. It seems as though it's stable, it's in homeostasis. All right. And then all of a sudden there's a phase transition. And that's what's going to happen. So her saying, well, there's no bloodbath yet, but it's happening. You just don't see the phase transition. These people are dumb. These people are dumb. The majority of them never took a science class. They all are business. They took business classes and they have no understanding of phase transition, fat tail events. No, they're wrong. They're wrong. Something big is coming.
Organizing itself around AI, and we saw the same phenomenon in other technological transformations. 2014, Microsoft shed 18,000 jobs as they were making the transition to really focus on mobile and cloud. And so this is kind of a natural thing that happens with Silicon Valley companies when we're going through one.
But you have to look at the whole landscape, not just Microsoft, the whole landscape. What did Ford just say? Ford CEO. All jobs are affected. All the white collar worker jobs are affected. All of them. All of them. Managers, underlings, it doesn't matter. Engineers, accountants, everybody. That's what Ford said. Ford CEO, whatever his name was, I forgot his name. Take a look at what's happening with the entry level for new college grads. There's a 6.6% unemployment for them. Almost 7% unemployment for new college grads that have science degrees, that have STEM degrees. We're not talking about humanity majors. The landscape is showing that there's going to be a phase transition soon.
These big technological transformations and reallocations.
But if we were having this conversation 12 months from now, do you think we're going to see a lot more of this, and will it be much more severe?
Yes, you're going to see more of it, but you're probably not going to see the big rapid. See, what's happening is that it's slowly happening, just like the ice cube slowly dripping and turning liquid, right? But then all of a sudden it speeds up and it melts much faster. That's probably between 12 to 24 months out.
I think so. I don't know about more severe, but I think, Microsoft has now gone through several waves.
Everything that, just think about this with generative AI. Everyone here could be replaced. You could have a host, AI, in video, asking questions to other AIs that are responding. You don't have to have this interaction with humans. This can all be generative AI, where you have an AI asking questions to an AI and the AI is responding. None of this, almost everything that they're saying could be similar to what an AI would say. I asked Grok recently, and I posted it, this was probably about a week ago. I asked Grok, what would happen if labor and capital decouple because of AI? Grok came back, which is an AI system. Grok came back saying there's going to be an accumulation of power and wealth with a very few number of people that control the infrastructure of AI, and that there will be universal income and social disruption. That was the answer that came back from that there's going to be social disruption because of the decoupling of labor and capital. The AI is emitting to the decoupling of labor and capital. If you don't believe me, test that yourself. Ask ChatGPT or some other AI system, what do humans do when there's a decoupling of capital and labor because of AI? And you'll be amazed on what it says. So everything we're seeing here could be generative AI. It's not, it's done by humans. And then take it even further. You can have an individual, human, that says, oh, thanks, whatever his name is, Joe or whatever his name is, I forgot his name, from CNBC. And he asks a question, and the AI just answers it back. You don't even need these experts, human experts anymore. You can almost solve every single problem that you have in corporate with using AI. Try it, try it, try it. Now people would say, well, it's not really integrated with Excel and it's hard and it's clunky. You're right, you're right. When you have to try to get data in and put it into a certain format that your corporation's used to with its reporting structure, its reporting format and reporting structure, that might be clunky. But as they smooth that out with Copilot, you won't need as many people. And McKinsey is reducing the number of consultants that they have because the ones that used to make the slide decks, the ones that were compiling the data, they don't need as many of them because they can retrieve the data and analyze the data much quicker with AI. You can feed AI a bunch of data and you can ask it to interpret the data. You can give it a question like, here's the data set, and you can ask, some sort of hypothesis, some sort of research question. Ask a research question based on this data. The null hypothesis is, the alternative hypothesis is that. It'll look at the data and give you the statistical significance if the null hypothesis is true or if the alternative hypothesis is true. That's what's already available.
Maybe there'll be more, maybe not. By the way, the cuts are really across the board, both geographically and across different divisions. Definitely hearing about some cuts on the Xbox side, various gaming studios. So they're across the board. I do think we'll see more of them, but that said, again, I don't know a single software engineer out here who's actually lost their job to AI. And even if 20 to 30% of the code is being generated at Microsoft now by AI, software engineers do a lot of things. They're not just constantly writing code nonstop. I asked a friend of mine just the other day, who's a software engineer out here, how much of your time are you actually giving off to vibe coding? And she said about 10%. They're checking the software, they're testing it, they do a lot of other things. So I do think that there's going to be a lot more, in other companies as well. I don't know about Microsoft, more of this restructuring and reprioritization, but not a huge loss of jobs due to AI anytime soon.
It doesn't make any sense. If you need 50 programmers, all right, and let's say 5 of them do quality assurance and assembly of the code, all right, where they're stitching things together, making sure it looks nice, and there's quality checks and all this. That's 5 of the engineers, but you needed 45 to write the code. And now you have an AI assistant writing the code for you. You don't need those 45 engineers. You may still need the 5 for quality assurance. And that's the point. That's the point. 90%, you don't need 90%. That seems to be drastic, but you probably could cut the workforce in terms of coders by 50% because of the AI assistant. Now, what could happen is that you just make more product. So let's say if your company is used to just making one product and you need 50 engineers, software engineers, and 5 to do the quality assurance and to assemble this product, all right? And if you only have that one product, you can use AI to help with writing the code so you don't need as many code writers, so that 45 could be cut in half, right? But you could have 50 of that 50 coders don't do any layoffs, and now you're doing not just one product, but you're doing 5 products. That could happen. We saw that in automotive, where first the number of draftsmen that you needed to make a car were in the thousands. Then when CAD came out, you radically diminished the number of draftsmen that were on the board. It was on the computer now. So you didn't need thousands. Now you only needed 8,000 instead of thousands. You only need 1,000 to design a car. And then when CAD became better and more accurate, more people knew how to use it. Then what happened is the number of CAD stations grew, and let's say you had 1,000 CAD stations. They weren't just doing one vehicle; they were doing multiple vehicles. Now, instead of designing one vehicle, maybe they were designing 2 or 3 out of that 1,000 that were engineers. Something similar might be happening with these larger software companies. But with the smaller software companies, when it's only one product, you won't need as many engineers. So if you're laying off that many people at Microsoft, it doesn't sound like what it sounds like to me is that they're not maintaining their number of coders. They're laying off those coders. They're also laying off middle management. And what they're going to do is they're going to use AI assistant to help write the code. You're going to have more people doing quality assurance to make sure the product is okay. And you're reducing that middle management to reduce costs. And that the number of people are not working on just one project, they're working on multiple projects.
It seems like it would be a good time for a lot of the other Mag 7 names or big cap tech names outside of Meta to examine that year of efficiency.
Right.
Meta really gained a lot in terms of stock market value because of the year of efficiency. And with AI kicking in, the ability to rate those efficiencies much easier, I would imagine.
We hear about that all the time, but we just don't.
The year of efficiency, all that means is that they cut labor, they cut costs, whatever those costs were, and now they're seeing it in their bottom line. So they have revenues and expenses. They reduce the expenses and boom, they have a better bottom line. Net income is better. So the year of efficiency. And it's a spiral because Wall Street analysts will upgrade the stock for, let's say, Meta, and then Meta is pushed to increase its efficiency or increase its revenue. And if it can't increase its revenue, it's going to have to cut more and implement more and more AI. So it's a downward spiral in terms of the job market. But eventually, what happens is a feedback loop where no one's buying their products anymore or using their products, and therefore the revenue stream goes down. And that is the second wave of this decoupling of capital and labor. There's a first wave is that there's this efficiency where the stocks that the companies that benefit from this efficiency are going to be bid up. And then all of a sudden, more and more of these companies do this. The stock market climbs. And then all of a sudden, there's massive layoffs, and there's a negative feedback loop where no one's buying anything in the country, in the economy, because no one has a job, and you have further decoupling of capital and labor. And then all of a sudden, then the analysts will cut their earnings per share, and then the stock starts to fall. And the way to play this is that you ride this up. This is why I think that the 2029 may be an event, a negative event for the stock market. You ride this up. Right? You start investing and you ride this up and you're waiting and waiting and waiting. And as you start hearing more and more people getting laid off and you just keep on investing in this environment. And then that event of 2029, if it takes place, then you short the damn thing. And then you're going to make your money on the way up and you're going to make your money on the way down. And those are the people that are in benefit on the other side of this. The ones that don't ride the wave and don't short when the crisis happens, you're fucked. You're fucked. Yeah, I'm telling you. I am giving you a playbook on how to survive this AI catastrophe that's coming. All right? Don't bet against America, because in the end, America will win out. But for you to benefit from this, you're going to have to ride this wall of worry up to 2029, and you're going to have to short it. And it's going to spiral down. And then what's going to happen is that governments are going to have to come in and regulate AI. But you'll make a ton of money if you do what I just said.
The evidence of it yet. I mean, there's so many anecdotal stories when I talk to CTOs at companies and I say, are you guys using AI? Did you buy a Copilot license and so forth? And so many people say, yeah, we're testing it, but it's too expensive. It doesn't do enough. We see some moderate gains in productivity. It's not really fulfilling that.
It's clunky. Right now, if you have a sophisticated workflow where you're taking in data and you're putting it into an Excel spreadsheet or some sort of database, and you're pulling that into other spreadsheets that analyze the data, that's a little clunky. It can be done, but it's a little clunky. But like PowerPoints and automating that's starting to become more, especially if they're like introductory pitches for, let's say, private equity or mergers and acquisitions or some sort of consulting where you have consultants, they have like templates where certain type of industry has this kind of template, and then you download that, you work it, your analyst would work it to the client's needs, right? And then it's presented, right? So there is a library of these that can be fed into an AI for it to be automatically generated. And companies are working on how to automate this process. But even if you didn't have an AI, the thing is that there's a library that they already have that they built up for different industries, and then they trim some things, add some other things for a particular customer, a client, for that industry. And it's usually the analysts that are making the slide deck to be presented by the PM, the program manager. But that process is speeding up, so you don't need as many analysts. And that's all done on Copilot. So is it clunky right now? Yes, but it's going to improve. And as it's improving, that's the speed of that phase transition that I was talking about earlier. And that's going to be within 12 to 24 months.
Promise that we heard him, but let's extrapolate this like a little bit, because I was talking to, I can't really say who it was, but I was talking to someone who works in HR at one of these big tech companies.
Yep.
They are already talking about a universe not in the not too distant future where your boss is an AI agent, and they're already talking about within this company planning for a world where you're literally reporting.
Right. So where's the higher level costs in the structure? Your managers. And this is the point I'm making. And there's friction because of just the social dynamics of managers. You can reduce that friction. You can allow for social learning within the AIs. And the CEO eliminates the directors and uses AI to tell the associate directors at a lower cost to instruct the underlings what to do. And the AI is fed results from the associate director on the next tasks or what they need to do. So, and then that's reported to the CEO or the COO or whatever. So middle management is going to get cut out too. It's not just the tech bros. But the beauty of this is that a CEO, the whole C-suite could be eliminated by AI. It can be eliminated AI. Now, most people wouldn't do that because they need plausible deniability. They need to go, you didn't do something right, we're going to fire you. The stock price is falling, so we're going to get rid of the CEO or the CFO. It's hard to do that when it's AI. That's part of the reason why they bring in consultants when there's a problem, so they can have plausible deniability. They bring in the consultant, it doesn't work, and they can blame it on the consultant.
Intelligent agent. What does that look like? How do you handle human resources? Do you manage people like that? This is how they're already, these companies are already thinking that way.
I talk to people about that.
Yeah.
I talk to people about who think that they're gonna have sort of these agent hierarchies, where there'd be an AI boss that would be bossing around, if you will, other AI agents that would have different tasks. If you were to think of sort of a various hierarchy, one would be responsible.
Because if you divide the problem out, it's easier to control through an AI system, just like how to solve a multivariable calculus problem. A multivariable calculus problem is broken up into pieces, and you can solve it that way. It's the same issue, the same logic. People need to wake up, man. AI is a bit, but what's going to happen is this is going to take the jobs. There's going to be an upsurge of hate against technology. There's going to be a decoupling of labor and capital, and then who's going to pay the debts. So there's going to be a breakdown in the economy, and there's going to be laws put in place to regulate this. And I think that there's going to be a revolution that's very similar to the French Revolution, where Americans, this is why I say don't bet against America, because I think in the end it will be beneficial. They will fight the AI. They will destroy the technology, literally destroy the technology, and destroy its Achilles heel, which is energy, and cut the energy supply, and go after the oligarchs, these tech bros, and all these ones that accumulate such massive wealth, and they'll kill them and their family. That's what's going to happen. There's going to be a French Revolution of the aristocracy, the tech bro aristocracy.
A reporter, one might be a reporter, and they might have an editor or a producer, or in this
Why
universe.
couldn't you make an AI agent?
That does it all. Yeah, why can't it do it all?
Why do there be layers of
I think
agents?
Because if it's one bit, see, this is where the dumb broad doesn't know anything. Guess what? If you tried to have the AI just solve everything, the computational power that is needed in the time to actually do it, it's going to be time prohibitive and cost prohibitive. If you break it into small chunks, it's quicker. But that's the problem with people that don't really have a STEM degree. They don't understand this concept. Just another dumb broad, just another dumbass in finance that doesn't know anything.
I think early on, part of it is, as we've all learned through prompting, you have to do it. Everything is actually quite specialized. You can't
do it in small chunks.
Tell AI to go do something.
You have to be specific.
It can't really do it, right? It's just like a person, by the way. A person is specialized in something, and they have sort of a strategy and a plan to do it. It's not like it becomes an all-seeing robot, I don't think.
And to your point, that's why we're not seeing huge layoffs, because I can't take those jobs.
What do you think about that? Do you think we're all...
But if you have an AI, this is the thing he's wrong. If you have an AI that does small prompts based on the strategy of the company, the CEO gives a strategy to an AI. And it says, these are the constraints, right? We want revenue to be at this rate. We want expenses to be at this ratio relative to revenue. These are the legal requirements. These are the constraints. Then the AI is designed to prompt other AIs in very small tasks to be able to accomplish the strategy from the CEO. Oh, it can be done. It wouldn't be top. You would have to build it from bottom up. I don't think that top down build to make this work would be the best strategy. You want, what are the tasks at the bottom, and then build it up. And then once you have enough of one layer of the lower layer of the organization. Then you have the AI start giving tasks. What are the tasks that are normally given to the lower layer? And then you feed that AI those tasks. And then it learns on how to disseminate those tasks to the lower agents. See, it used to be humans at the lower level. Now AI agents replace that lower level. You have humans at the upper level, the next layer, that start to program the prompts so they know on how to adjust what their tasks should be based on certain criteria. So that layer, the second layer, is now AI'd. The next human layer is slowly training the AI layer to program the lower level, or, to prompt the lower level. And so you just work this up, bottom up, and I think that it would be doable. Now, there could be an emergent property where things could get awry and it maybe can't be completely autonomous. So you may need some peppering of humans watching to see if this is running properly. Because there probably would be, even if you try to do a closed system, there's probably an emergent property that you didn't expect that might arise in the organization. The flow with the AIs talking to each other. But it's going to happen. It's going to happen. Now, is that more autonomous organization that's run by AI in 12 months to 24 months? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But that phase transition of more layoffs, that's going to be within 12 to 24 months.
Going to be have an AI boss soon?
No, I don't. Not at all. I think we will have an AI, helper, an AI assistant. I think that makes a lot more sense to me. By the way, there's a company out here called Latticeworks. They're in the HR space, and they actually launched a product a while back.
Yeah, you're going to have that, and that's going to last for about 5 years. But eventually, over time, more and more of the organization is going to be AI'd.
That was onboarding AI agents, and there was such a backlash, they decided to pull the product. They're heavy into AI and using AI for all sorts of HR, practices, functions, but that one didn't go over well. I think, as a culture, corporate cultures, even on the startup level, like not quite ready for that. But yes, we'll have more and more of AI, a lot of experimentation going on right now, not a lot of use cases that are really proving themselves quite yet. But I do think we'll continue to see people working hand in hand. Vibe coding is real. I mean, engineers are leaning on it, and I think it's going to get better and better, and it's going to have more and more use cases. But I absolutely don't think that we're going to be, getting like 360 performance reviews from an AI bot anytime soon. Probably never.
Luca Faloni's cotton chinos are meticulously handcrafted in Italy by skilled artisans, using premium cotton for superior comfort.
Let's see what here we are. Oh. All right, let's listen to France 24 about how there's cognitive dissonance within MAGA. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the heirloom barley. Heirloom barley will help to detoxify your body, bring down inflammation, and soak up free radicals with superoxide dismutase. By bringing down inflammation, you're helping with your joints, you're helping with your immune system, you're helping with your vascular system. So please go to my store and take the heirloom barley. In addition, stack it with Boomer Boost. Boomer Boost has 68 nutrients, has a very comprehensive compound profile. Take it every day. You get a big scooper, this is a month's supply. You mix it with soft foods, filtered water, milk, or a smoothie. Take it every day. If you want to lose weight, this is a great way to lose weight safely. You're going to have energy throughout the whole day, no spiking of energy. And it targets multiple systems. It targets your cardiovascular system. It helps with your brain function. It helps with musculature, boosts up energy levels, and revs up your metabolism. This will help to slow down the aging process. And if you stack it with heirloom barley or gladiator barley, you're going to help with controlling your A1C levels, and you're bringing down inflammation, detoxifying your body, and soaking up free radicals. So for max benefit, take the Boomer Boost and take it with the heirloom barley or the gladiator barley. But you can take Boomer Boost by itself, and you can take the barleys by themselves. So please go to my store and get the Boomer Boost. Super important.
Well, for some insight, I'm joined on set by Ellen Kuntz, a professor at French Business School INSEC and the author of the book Portrait of Veep, The Incredible Story of Kamala Harris. Thank you so much for coming in this morning.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
Now, the thing I have struggled to understand with this bill is that so many Republicans seemed really hesitant to pass it. A lot of them even mentioned all of the things about it that they thought were a bad idea. Why did they still vote for it? I mean, what made those Republicans fall in line?
Well, unfortunately, many of them are up for re-election, so they fear for their own seats. I also believe that they fear the wrath of Donald Trump, and they don't want to be called out publicly. Some of them, like Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, were able to obtain things for their own state. So they were able to get some write-ins to the law to get a little extra something for their own state. But I have to say, as an American, one thing I've always really regretted about American culture is this idea that there is kind of a taste for always wanting to punish the poor. And there's a lot of disdain for people who are in need. So I think that this bill reflects that unfortunate attitude. And it also underlines something that's really just leads to a lot of cognitive dissonance, which is apparently the Republicans were supposed to be the ones interested in fiscal conservatism.
Yeah, I mean, it made them, it's interesting that they, this bill kind of flies in the face of one of their core principles.
Yes.
Is that kind of a reflection then of Trump's grip on the Republican Party and the way that he's transformed it?
Well, I think the problem is maybe collectively we've lost sight of what taxes are for and what there are taxes. Today's July 4th. It's supposed to be the celebration of Independence Day. And I know that President Trump is using that to, he'll be signing in the bill this afternoon. But it's really a shame. And the other thing that it reveals also is how his supporters, many of the MAGA, who are in poorer states or southern states or states that have higher social needs, were very much in favor of this bill that's going to slash their own benefits. So a lot of strange cognitive dissonance among the MAGA, and who are convinced to vote against their own interests.
I wanted to ask about public opinion because is it true that Trump supporters kind of also supported this bill? Or aren't some of the individual parts of it though, and people are against cutting Medicaid, right? They're against cutting.
Well, MAGA is on Medicaid. Let's be clear. MAGA, there are states that are higher contributors. For example, I'm from, like New York and California. We contribute to some of the southern states that don't have this strong economies. So they actually need these things. I think there was something else at stake here. Back in Trump's first mandate, he was determined to roll back or undo what is called Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, because it was President Obama. And he was unable to achieve it in the House and Senate. He was unable to achieve it at the level of the Supreme Court. So I think that this was ultimately a way to kind of put a really strong dent in Obamacare without being able to roll it back, because there will be about 17 million Americans who are going to have reduced health care.
And you said, a lot of these Republican senators and congressmen and women probably voted for this because they are up for re-election in the coming midterms. Couldn't this backfire, though, in a serious way? I mean, if people find their benefits cut, couldn't it go the other way where voters say, hey, you voted for this bill that took away my welfare. I want you out.
That could happen if they had the courage to continue to do their town halls, which, when they receive the general public, they've kind of stopped that. I think a lot of it is really strong ideology. It's a lot of fantasy. It's a lot of how do you say, party discipline. Like, it's very important if you are declared as a Republican, it's just really important to stay on the Republican side, kind of no matter what they decide. And some of it might just be a little bit of everyday racism because they think it's going to hurt minority communities that they may not be a part of, but ultimately they're also going to get hurt as well.
Do you think that Democrats, meanwhile, kind of put up enough of a fight? I mean, we saw Hakeem Jeffries, making that 8-hour stand. But aside from that, I mean, did they really do enough?
I think that they did what the 20th century would have demanded, but they haven't quite found the recipe for what they're going to need to really stand up to out and out authoritarianism. You see, it used to be more of a fair fight. They were bringing a knife to a knife fight. Now it looks like they're bringing a spoon to a knife fight. So it's hard on the Democrats right now to find their footing to really capture public opinion in a significant way.
If the U.S. debt augments even more, which it's supposed to under this bill, and to the tune of several $1 trillion, is that going to impact the standing of the U.S. on the world stage? I mean, do you think, coming from France, how are people looking at the U.S. because of this bill?
Well, I think that because of a lot of the attitudes and the intention of the Trump administration.
They keep on forgetting to add in the productivity of the GDP, right? Which is a major point on this whole thing for the bill, or for the law now. Now, the reason why Democrats forget about the GDP increasing because of productivity is because they're so used to having their programs be ineffective in terms of growing the GDP.
Immediately, because one thing that was mentioned is, SNAP, it's basically food stamps. There are going to be people who are down and out, poor women who may be alone with children, and all of a sudden their check is no longer in the mail. So I think it's cruel and mean-spirited, and there are a lot of people who don't have a voice, who are not going to be captured in the media, and are going to have to suffer in silence. It's a shame.
And this is coming, as we've mentioned, on the 4th of July. How would you describe the mood in the U.S. as it celebrates its birthday this year?
I think that there's a lot of questioning of what's happening.
The problem in the United States, especially a lot of people on welfare, the reality of the situation is a lot of them want a hammock instead of a safety net. Welfare is supposed to be a safety net, not a hammock. And the problem is you got a lot of people that have a expensive iPhone and they're living on welfare. They want the good time life. And unfortunately, there's a lot of individuals that are of minorities that are living on welfare, and they're of a darker skin color. And if you don't believe me, take a look at the inner cities. Look at the inner city of Detroit. Look at the inner city of Chicago. Look at the inner city of Los Angeles. Look at the inner city of New York. It's a big problem. People out there are taking advantage of the welfare system.
Again, that's Ellen Kuntz, a professor at the French Business School, INSEC, author of the book Portrait of Veep, The Incredible Story of Kamala Harris.
Yep. So let me get this straight. You're telling me I don't have to spend countless hours consolidating our company's financial data anymore? It's all automated?
Yeah.
And I can keep using my own Excel models without having to change anything?
Yep.
And I can generate our financial statements with just a single click every month?
Yep.
And what about those customizable dashboards? Can I really drill down into every metric I need?
Yep.
So basically what you're saying is I can save tons of hours of manual work and have more time for deep analysis and also have accurate data all the time?
Yeah.
See, systems are coming in where it's reducing the amount of work. So you don't need as many analysts, you don't need as many back office people. And so what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60. C60 will soak up free radicals. You can get it in a 2-ounce, a 4-ounce, or an 8-ounce configuration. You can get it in avocado oil, extra virgin olive oil, or MCT coconut oil. Take a teaspoon a day, preferably on an empty stomach for best absorption. Take it every day. And what you're gonna notice is that you are slowing down the aging process. You're gonna look younger, but not only that, you're really, your tissues are going to perform better because you're soaking up the free radicals, reducing stress in the cell and the tissues. And by doing that, you're improving the mitochondria in the cell. So your ATP is gonna go up. And by improving your ATP, you're gonna have more energy for your cells and your tissues to perform. So that means your immune system is gonna perform better, your glands are gonna perform better, your endocrine system is gonna perform better, your neurons will perform better. Why? Because by reducing stress in the neuron, you're maintaining the health of the myelin sheath. By soaking up free radicals and improving the mitochondria in your neuron, you're gonna have more ATP. You're gonna have the energy to be able to produce the neurotransmitters to allow for communication between the neurons. So you'll think quicker, you'll have better memory. And by doing this on a regular basis, every day, a teaspoon a day, what you're gonna notice is that you're slowing down the aging process. Not only that, by soaking up free radicals at your vascular level, you're reducing oxidized LDL. You're reducing the amount of oxidized LDL that's in your bloodstream. And when you do that, you're reducing plaque formation. So there's a multitude of benefits by taking C60. I've been taking it since 2016. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60, either in a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, or an 8 ounce configuration. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order. If you spend $150 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. Like I said, if you follow my protocol, you're gonna slow down the aging process. You're gonna have more vitality, you're gonna have more energy. You're gonna look younger, you're gonna feel younger. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and help support the work that I do. And better yet, get healthy. All right? If you follow what I mentioned in this broadcast, and you take many of the supplements and stack them the way I tell you, you're gonna see huge benefits for your health. But it's a holistic approach. It's taking the proper supplementation, drinking filtered water, staying away from processed foods, doing the 4 modalities of exercise, which are resistance training, cardio, stretching and balancing exercises, learn new things, read, write, and talk to people, stay away from screen time, read a real book, not an ebook, a real book, all right? And proper sleep, mindfulness, or some sort of level of spirituality. These are all holistic approaches on top of the proper supplementation to slow down the aging process. All right, so please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.